Hello, welcome to the third lecture. Today we will talk about human communication. So we know that humans and animals both communicate, but then they communicate in different ways. So you must know that bees communicate through waggle dance, dogs bark, move their tails to show that they are happy, fish they make sounds and change their body color to communicate. But we humans, we communicate through a very different system. Archaeological records suggest that communication with language emerged about 200,000 years ago, and it is taken as probably the single most advantageous evolutionary adaptation of the human species. So, as I mentioned that both animals and humans communicate, how is it different? It is different in both the ways, the matter and manner of communication, both differs. Language for humans is helpful in expressing different types of feelings, complex information, abstract thoughts, ideas and more. Humans have developed vocal tract which can produce a wide range of sounds. And not only we can produce sounds, we can also perceive the difference between different sounds. And these sounds help us to communicate. So languages vary across the globe. We know there are lots and lots of languages, and all these languages are very different from each other. There is linguistic diversity in our globe. But still, all these different languages, they share some common features. And today we will talk about these common features, which can also be called universal properties of languages. Charles Hockett, an American linguist and anthropologist, in 60s proposed 13 features of language. Later on he added 4 more to the list. So these features are called design features. Though all of these are not only for humans, they also include other primates, but 8 of them are only for human communication. They are unique to human communication. But as you know that this proposal was made in 1960s, lots of criticisms have been done for this work, and also there are new features which has been explored. So I will not totally stick to Hockett's design features, but if you want to know in details about it, you can read the book which is suggested in the suggested readings in the last slide. So, okay, let's see what are the different features which are unique for human language. Humans can produce innumerable amounts of new sentences. So, that is called productivity or creativity. We can create different types of sentences. The sentences which we have never heard before, we can talk about that, right? So you can imagine that lots of sentences which you utter, you might not have heard ever in your life, but still you can create those sentences and you can talk about that, right? And not only about sentences, but also about words. We also coin new words. During COVID, lots of new words were created, right? And it was in use. So productivity is one way in which language change is also met according to the changing times, right? So a very common example will be mouse. We all know mouse is a device which we use with computers, right? But then mouse earlier was an animal which we could easily find in Indian homes. So now we see that the meaning of mouse has been broadened up. Okay. So this way language actually changes on due to productivity and creativity. Language is both productive and creative. Secondly, recursion. Recursion means if we know the rules about the language, if we know the grammatical rules, consciously or not consciously, just if our brain knows it, we can use it to produce different and long, infinite length of sentences we can create with it. So if I start saying, I met a queen yesterday in my house who was wearing a red dress with flowers on it, with golden jewelry and a beautiful crown on her head, and she had a diamond on her ring and golden bracelets, I can just keep on saying and saying. It will be infinite, right? So you all can also do it. In sentence, that's the beauty. We can make it as long as we want. That is a feature of human language, recursion. If we know the grammatical rules, it can be used to create different types of sentences and different length of sentences. That also means that our brain is capable of understanding and producing indefinite grammatical structures. Sentences which we have never heard earlier or which we have never spoken, never read, we can speak that today. Right. So everyone can do that. With language, if we know the rules, the grammatical features, we can always create our own sentences, and those sentences can be of any length. This helps us to understand language acquisition as well. So when children learn language, they do not just imitate adults for language. For other behaviors, they might do. But for language, they pick up the rule. Not consciously, of course, but still they hear and they pick up the rule, and then they follow the rule to create their own sentences, to create or to produce their own structures. So we know that one of the features of human language is recursion. Displacement is another feature. Displacement is about, we can imagine, you can talk about lots of events which you are not part of. Or right now, standing here, I can talk about, say, World War I, World War II. I can talk about anything. I don't need to be there. I don't need to always talk about the current time or current space. I can talk about different spaces, I can talk about different time zone, and that is the beauty of human language, which can be called or termed as displacement, a feature of human language. Another one is interchangeability, which means any human can say what the other human has said, or what we say, we can be a speaker at a time, and then we can also be a hearer. So I say and I hear and I listen to the response of my audience, and then again I react. So I can be both the performer and the hearer at the same time. But that is not possible for all the species. In some of the species, the rules are very fixed. So for some species, you will see one animal or one particular gender of animal or sex of animal, they can produce a particular type of sound, maybe for mating or other purpose. But the other sex of the same species can't produce that noise. So it is very specific. But for humans, it's not so. Even when I am a girl, I can say I am a boy. There is no trouble in saying that. You might say that that's not truth, or you can judge the truth value of it, but that's different. What I want to say is that there is no problem me uttering that or writing that. That's why there are lots of fictions written. So I can write anything, right? And then at the same time I can read. So both can be, the roles can be interchanged. Learnability is another feature of human language. So languages has to be taught and learned. It's not like that one can't learn language, one can learn language. There are also acquisitions, child acquire language. But then it is a process where both languages can be taught and can be learned. Another feature of language can be called discreteness, which means imagine when you hear a language which you don't know, which you can't speak or understand. It is difficult for you to understand where are the words, right? So you listen to the whole sentence, but you don't know which are the exact words. You can't break the words if the language is unknown to you. But when you hear your own language, you can easily do that. You know where are the word breaks. You can easily break the words or know that these are the words, and then the words combine together and form a sentence. Imagine seeing this as sound wave. What will you see? You will see continuous sound waves. There will be no break between words or sentences. There can be minor pauses, but there won't be break. It will be a continuous flow. So acoustically, sounds and words, they blend together, but our brains are smart enough to divide or separate the words from the other word. And we know that this sentence has 5 words. So we can easily separate the 5 words from the sentence. So that is the beauty of human language. When a sentence is uttered, words and sentences are part of the same continuum, but we can easily separate them when we know the language. So that actually also helps us to use language in productive manner. So there are lots of sounds in a language. You can think about the sound k and kh. You can think about these two sounds of your own language. Do they make difference in the language? Because, why I am mentioning this right now? Because I mentioned that our brains can separate words, different words from a sentence when we know the language. Similarly, our brains can also differentiate different sounds, and this feature is exploited in creating different words or different sounds. So in some languages, two sounds may not make difference in the meaning. So they are not discrete, they are part of the same sound. There might be difference in the sound, like k and kh. They are two different sounds in most of the Indo-Aryan languages. For example, in Hindi, k and kh are two different sounds. You can understand this with these examples. So if I say kaat, in Hindi it means to cut. But if I say khat, it means caught. But think about English. If I say cat or if I say cat with kh, cat and cat, the meaning doesn't change. They are same. So, k and kh are not discrete sounds in English, but k and kh are discrete sounds in Hindi. And our brain knows that k and kh, a Hindi speaker will easily know that k and kh are different sounds because they contribute in the meaning. So a Hindi speaker will never get confused between cat and khat. They know that they are two different words and they mean differently. While for English speakers, it doesn't matter whether you say cat or cat. It can just be a variation of the same word cat. So this discreteness is also language specific. Certain sounds are discrete in one language but may not be in other language. But all languages have set of sounds which are discrete, and these sounds form different words. Like for example, in English, b and p are different sounds. So I can say bin and pin, and both doesn't mean the same. So b and p are discrete sounds, while k and kh are not discrete sounds in English, while k and kh are discrete sounds in Hindi. So that shows that discreteness is part of language, but they are again language specific. Okay. Now coming to the next feature, which is languages culturally transmitted. So imagine if you meet your friend's parents, how will you greet them? You will say namaste, hello, but you will say uncle and auntie. It's very unlikely you will say Mr. X and Mrs. X. But in some of the cultures, people do say that. But in Indian culture, we generally greet our friends' parents or our neighbors as uncle and auntie. So these are actually part of our culture, and that is culturally transmitted, maybe from one generation to another or maybe learned from the peers. That means you are actually referring to the same two people, but you are addressing them differently depending on your culture. the culture in which you belong. So that is a feature of language. So language is not in isolation, it also carries the cultural part. It also is or shows the cultural aspect. Moreover, there are different varieties of language. All languages have certain rules and features, but they vary at different levels. We are talking about universal properties of languages, that's there, but then there are also lots of variation. The rules are or the universal patterns are there, of course, but at the same time we also see lots of variation. So variation depends on various aspects. One is the use of language varies depending on the social identity of the user. So by listening to someone, you can have an idea about the person's background, maybe about educational background, regional background, geographical background. So lots of things are revealed through the use of language. Lots of metalinguistic information is passed on through language. Imagine someone staying in Delhi talking in Hindi and someone from Bihar or Manipur speaking Hindi. You will see a difference. Both of them are using the same language, Hindi, but then there are differences, and these are there because of the regional variation. They belong to different region, that's why there are variations in the language. Not only depending on the regions language vary, but also depending on the use language varies. So if I give you a text taken from social media and I give you a paragraph taken from, say, a novel, I believe easily you can identify that these sentences are taken from a comment of social media and the other set is taken from a novel or a book, right? How do you know that? If you don't know the source, how do you know that? You know that by the way, by the pattern the language has been used. So depending on the use, there are variations. For example, you can look at this tree diagram. You see that language can be used for both writing and speaking. Talking about writing, the way you write your applications is very different the way you write comments on social media. You can write about the same thing. You can write about your problems. You can comment about that on social media, or you can write a blog about that on social media or anywhere. But the way how you will write will be very different than the way you will write, say, an application, or if you write a book, a thesis, a report. So everywhere the language used will be little different, though you will be using the same language. Similarly, while speaking also, language varies. If you are delivering a speech, you will talk in a different manner than you will talk in an interview room while facing an interview. So talking also or speaking, both of these can depend on the use. Why are you using it? With whom you are using it? What is the context? So depending on that, we can see lots of variation in the language. So if I want to sum up, I can say that these are some of the universal features or some of the universal properties of language. But these are only few of them. In my next class, I will also talk about other properties. So quickly we can revise about productivity and creativity. So productivity and creativity gives us the option to create whatever we want to with sentence, right? We can express whatever we want. We can create sentences which we have never heard, about which we have never read, but we can create that. So language is very productive. We can create new sentences, we can create new words. That is about creativity and productivity. Displacement is about when we can talk about something not being in that space or time. So standing here, I can talk about World War I, World War II, about a fair that I saw last year. So anything I can talk about. I don't need to be at that exact time and space to talk about that. Interchangeability is about how we can change our roles of speaker and hearer, and also how we can use the hearer speech I can use it as a speaker. So we can change roles and we can also say anything we want. It's not like I was the hearer, so I can't speak like the speaker. And learnability, we have to learn language. Languages can be learned and taught. Recursion is about, if we know the grammatical rules, we can create long sentences, never ending sentences. So if you know the grammatical rules, or when a child knows the grammatical rules, she can create as many structures as she wants, or we can create as long and different types of sentences, different types of structures. Discreteness is about how different units of language, may it be sound or word, how they are different from each other. They are discrete. They may be part of the same continuum. When I speak, I am speaking a sentence and all the words are coming together. But you know which are the different words in a sentence. So different units or different words are discrete. Similarly, different sounds are discrete. Discreteness is a universal property of language, but again discreteness depends on language. It is also language specific. So a sound might be discrete for a language, but it might not be discrete or different unit for another language. And lastly, today we talked about culturally transmitted and variability feature of language. So we know that languages not only are means of communication, it also carries cultural aspect with it. So language use depends on the culture of the community, the culture of the speech community, and also it varies depending on various social factors. When one learns language, one knows the culture related aspect with the language. So one knows when to say thank you or when to say sorry, because those are part of culture. In some culture there is no practice of saying say thank you to elders. So those children or those people, they don't say thank you to elders because that is not part of the culture, or that might even be offensive for some people. But again, in some culture, saying thank you is compulsory, and if you don't say thank you, it is taken as a bad manners or something like that. So language is not in isolation, it carries the culture and it is culturally transmitted, and there are different variations in the language. That's what we find. So there are different languages, though there are universal properties which bind language, there are these common features, still there are various differences in the languages. So that's it. So these are the suggested readings and you can go through them. Thank you.